Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Smarter Campus podcast, where we are changing education one conversation at a time. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined by Betty Chandy, the Director of AI and Technology Enhanced Learning Initiatives at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. Betty, sorry for the stumbling here. Thank you so much for being here. If you could just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, we can jump in.
Thank you for having me, Zach. My name is Betty Chandy, and I am part of the Center for Innovation at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. Part of what I do is design teacher professional development programs based on what we know as good teaching and learning from research in the learning sciences. For years, we have been thinking about what does it mean to teach in a technology-mediated environment. And more recently, we've been thinking about what are the skills that we want our students to develop and what are we preparing them for. And part of that was thinking about this idea of computational thinking and developing computational thinking skills in students. And so we launched a program called Experiences in Applied Computational Thinking. And that's the work that led me down this path to an AI certificate and thinking about what's the role of AI in education. How do we support teachers and school systems to continue evolving and learning during this time of big change?
That is amazing. So, I mean, you're very intertwined in the AI world, and I know you have a big background in K-12. So, how did you get into this AI space?
Great question. I started off as a classroom teacher myself, but I grew up in a time where my classrooms didn't have any technology, not even not a TV, just a blackboard and chalk. And so when I started teaching, I had the opportunity to get some technology for my classroom, an overhead projector, a TV, which we had to roll in from another room, but that worked. And that really got me thinking about what does it mean to design for teaching and learning. And I'm from India, and that's where I started my work. And so I came to the US as a student to think about technology mediated teaching environments, what kind of learning happens there. And I started my master's program, and then I realized that I'd barely scratched the tip of the problem. And so then I stayed on to do my doctoral studies, and I went deeper and deeper into, as I went deeper and deeper into this world, I realized that the key to change is the teacher. Like the biggest support or the biggest change in any system would start with the teacher. You need to empower teachers that they need the right kind of training, they need the right kind of pedagogical moves, and the world is changing around them. Teachers tend to teach the way they were taught. It's almost like you're teaching them, and teacher preparation programs also teach them to teach a certain way, but when they get into the classroom, the reality is different, and the world is constantly changing. So you're changing the game on teachers all the time, and that's what drew me into teacher professional development. What does it mean to design good teacher PD that really supports teacher reflective practice?
Okay, so I would love to talk about kind of that PD, right? Like the professional development, like how are you staying up to date with, it's impossible, but how are you like empowering teachers with that professional development like in the age of AI right now?
So we at the Graduate School of Education at the
Yep.
University of Pennsylvania would like to think about PD not as a one and done, but an extended engagement, taking teachers along on a journey. Unfortunately, traditionally, PD has been thought of as this day-long training. You train the teachers to use a tool, you train the teachers on a new move, a new pedagogy, and done. And then the teachers tend to have to figure things out themselves. And we know from research that it doesn't always work that way. So we design our certificate programs or our PD programs sort of like extended release tablets, this like a little bit at a time. And we try and develop professional learning communities. We set teachers up to have conversations with each other, share successes and failures, and design and redesign, whether it's a lesson plan or the use of a tool, think through it over a period of time. And our hope is that at some point GSE exits, right? We're done with the the program, but the learning community that we established, whether it's in a school or a district, will continue to use that model to learn with each other and from each other and continue that learning process. So that's the approach to professional development for us.
So, what skills are you like leading with in that professional development?
So it depends on the topic, right? So right
Yeah.
now with AI, a lot of times when we start these PD programs, we get a lot of resistance because teachers are afraid sometimes. It's a fear of the unknown, and also these conversations that random people have about, oh, we don't need teachers anymore, we don't need schools anymore, and AI can do a better job. And usually we have to start with reassuring teachers that you're the human, you're the expert. You understand your students, you understand how they feel, you know from years of working with students what works and what does not work, and there is no replacing you. Let's start there. But there are ways to help you. There are ways to empower you. And let's look at that. And another thing that I've realized, especially with resistant teachers, is that they sometimes think of AI as just ChatGPT or Gemini,
Yep.
this generative AI phase. And when you show them the bigger picture of everything from your recommendation engines to your Amazon, Netflix, etc., to the maps that you used today to get to school, to your Fitbit, everything uses machine learning, and that this is a bigger world that we live in. And by not helping our students to think through how data is used about, around them and data about them is used, we are probably disadvantaging them. And one thing that I know about teachers is all teachers want to do good by their students. And when they see that there is a bigger picture here, and it's not just about plagiarism in an English assignment or doing your homework with the help of ChatGPT. This need for AI literacy is much bigger than an assignment or an exam. It is really helping students to understand the world that we live in and the bigger world that is to come, and to be asking critical questions, to be thinking through what is bias, what are you losing if you are over dependent, over reliant on these tools? What are you gaining if you're going to use these tools to think with? And so when you start from that space, you see that teachers are much more ready and willing to say, I might not understand everything, but I need to do this, and I'm going to do this for my students.
Okay, I mean, I love that. So, this is kind of a big question, but like, what do you define as like AI literacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, I don't think there's any agreement among
Yeah.
even the experts about what constitutes AI literacy. But for us, we start with thinking about just understanding how AI works, like looking under the hood to some extent. What does it mean to when you say something like machine learning? Having some familiarity with generative AI versus, say, a supervised learning model or an unsupervised learning model, thinking about, um, you know, um, uh, machine learning techniques that have allowed, say, credit. Everyone knows at some point their credit card was declined because of a fraudulent activity. How did that work? Who knew? Who was watching out for your card? So thinking about how AI works and that how regression-based analytics is different from generative tools like ChatGPT. So starting somewhere there, just understanding the different kinds of AI around us, the different ways in which AI is used, how data in is what's driving these things, and this idea of data is flawed. Because whose data, how much data, how was it collected? And when you have machines making some decisions, predictive decisions, what might be some pitfalls? So these questions of ethics and bias around AI. Also thinking about, especially in the age of generative AI, what does it mean to own content? What does it mean to generate music? Who owns that? Whose IP? And so all of these conversations that is part of that the necessity for living every day. and consuming content and being in this world, in this digital world, all of that would be part of AI literacy for us.
Okay, that's amazing. It's such a hard thing to define, right? Especially like when it's changing so fast. And one thing, our first conversation that we had before this podcast, one thing that you talked to me about that I think is very important that not very many people are talking about is like the coupling of COVID and ChatGPT. People don't talk about it enough. And I would love for you to tell people what you think about that.
Yeah, when COVID happened, one thing we know is schools all pivoted to fully online learning. And there was a lot of content that was put online by teachers and educators, both in K-12 and higher ed. Students were spending a whole lot more time online. And so you have this explosion of student created work and then all the online newspapers or what have you, all kinds of online media were churning out things because people were all isolated from each other in their own homes. And I feel like there was this huge explosion of data. And I think that I've always wondered about the connection between that explosion of data from 2020 and 2021 leading to the training of these models that eventually led to what we have in 2022 with the launch of ChatGPT and all of these other models. So I think there's a connection there that don't people don't talk about much, but definitely if we did not have COVID, the amount of things to scrape off the internet would have been a little less, and
Yeah.
we would have had less perfect models these days.
I mean, I think that's such an interesting concept because it's like it's funny. We just talked about AI literacy and then you kind of just talked about online resources feeding models. So for people like who don't understand the correlation between that, like what does that mean to people?
So these large language models were trained on this large corpus of internet scraped data. So you need such large amount of data to train a model. And we didn't realize it, but there were companies harnessing everything that's happening online, be it on social media or on other media outlet platforms. And there were teams working on this, and that data was used to train these large language models. I think that's why it was at NYT that went to court because a
Yeah.
lot of articles or a lot of their articles were used to train these models. So I think the amount of data that was used to train models was phenomenal. And there was no IP question here because, or intellectual property rights question here, because I think there's this fair use, this idea of fair use. And when you're using it to train a model, and it's not for, like, you're not selling that content, somehow that fell under an umbrella which allowed these companies to use this data that was freely available on the internet to train their models, and now you have these very powerful models.
Yeah, I mean it's so interesting, right? Because so many people didn't like understand it. Like I always talk about how Elon Musk bought Twitter and people were like, "What is he doing?" And it was just because guess what? That's the largest repository of human interaction that it really exists. So,
Yeah.
on that note, security is a big issue, right? IP is a big issue. What do you teach people about like safety in this world?
So, especially when you're working with teachers, it's really important. There are laws that protect, students and rights, their rights to educational data, etc., FERPA, COPA, all of those. So, with teachers, I start with saying, helping them think about the risks associated with it, and we encourage teachers to work very closely with their IT departments. And we encourage districts to partner with these companies and have contracts in place. So, for example, one of the largest school districts in America that we work with, have a clear contract with Google. They're a Google district, but they do have a contract that very clearly asks for no information from that district to be used by Google to train their models or to be shared in any other way. All of their data stays in the school servers. And so, especially with districts that might want to give their teachers some freedom about what kind of tools you want to use, what kind of platforms do you want to use. There is a risk of teachers using a lot of these free platforms, and when the there's people keep saying if it's free, then you are the product. So, when they have students on a particular platform, their data is being used. If it's free and you don't have any contracts in place, that data is being used by somebody for something. Maybe not always for nefarious reasons, but we just don't want to be able to, we don't want to risk that. So we encourage school district IT teams to think through what kinds of tools do your teachers like, and not to think in terms of like brands, but in terms of the use of tools. I mean, would your teachers like a polling tool? Then think of one polling tool that you want to partner with, and then have some kind of a contract with that company. You don't need five different types of polling tools. You need a polling tool, which helps your students and teachers to have real-time interactions in class. You need um, so when you think about technology in terms of categories, technologies that help students collaborate, technologies that help design assessment, technologies that allow for learning through great games, then it becomes easier for even districts to come up with a short list of here are the tools that we're going to use, and we'll stick to this for now till we understand usage and patterns. We are sure that our data is protected, we are sure that students are safe in these environments, and we will grow slowly as we need to add to it. So that is my advice to teachers and IT departments: to start small, be very intentional about what is it being used for, and then growing from there.
Okay, great. So like you obviously have to stay up to date on this stuff, right? Like same with me, it's really hard, right? So how do you like stay up to date with what's going on?
Yeah, I am an educator more than a tech specialist, but just because of the nature of the work that I do, it's really important that I stay up to date with what is the latest and the greatest. And for me, part of my job is trying to look into the future. So when ChatGPT first launched in 2022, I started playing with it right around that time and was trying to think about what does this mean for classrooms? What does this mean for teachers? And then now we're talking about agentic models, and we're talking about all of these different systems. And my job is to think 5 years from now, what might this look like? What kind of skills and dispositions do students need to use this tool? And what kind of skills and dispositions would we need as humans and people operating 5 years from now? And maybe there are some things that we need to let go. For example, I can tell you my dad's office phone number from the 1980s, but I can't tell you my daughter's phone number. I need to actually look it up. But there's something that I remember because back in the day, we had to memorize phone numbers. I can tell you the phone numbers of everybody who lived down our street because my mom made us memorize it in terms of an emergency, right? These days, we don't memorize phone numbers. We barely know our best friend's phone number. We've offloaded the need to remember phone numbers to technology. What are some other skills that as technology evolves and becomes an integral part of our lives, what are some skills that we might need to offload to technology? And if that's the way we are going, what does that mean for teaching and learning? And so it always comes back to what is the future? I'm always trying to look into this crystal ball and think about what's the future going to look like? And how do we prepare students today for that world? We are still preparing students today for yesterday's world in many classrooms, unfortunately. A lot of the curriculum is old, a lot of the ways in which we do teaching and learning is old. It's barely preparing them for today's world. But what we should be doing is preparing students for tomorrow's world. So I do my best to read up, stay up current, watch all kinds of um, panels, talk to experts in education, listen to podcasts to keep myself aware of what's happening around me and continually think about what does this mean for the future of education.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. So, I mean, you obviously work with lots of educators, faculty kind of from around the world. So if someone was listening to this and they were like, I know this is important, but Betty, I just don't know where to start. Like, how would you recommend someone starting?
Well, I think that it takes a village
Yeah.
to raise a child, and it takes an entire school system to do right by their students. So, in as much as an individual teacher or an individual administrator could do some things, a school system needs to be uh, working together to be able to move the needle on this, which is why in a lot of our present programming around artificial intelligence, we don't sign up teachers, we sign up districts. Because I've been doing professional development for teachers for 20 years now. And we've noticed that a lot of times we train teachers on an amazing tool, an amazing pedagogical move, or whatever. And they go back into the classroom and they don't have support. Like their principal doesn't let them do that differently, or the department chair says, nope, that's not how you teach science or something. So we've recognized the need now to get district administration, building leaders, and teachers on the same page. So, especially with artificial intelligence, we've been trying to work with districts and get that vertical alignment where we speak to district administrators, really help them envision a different kind of teaching and learning environment in the age of AI. And once we have the buy-in, we then work with building leaders and think about how can principals support innovation and pedagogy in their pedagogy with AI in their buildings. And then we get to the teachers. And when we work with the teachers, we've already talked to the district and the building leaders, and we are now aware of specific contextual constraints. What might be something that the district does not want, does not allow, whether it be tools or a certain kind of pedagogical move, whatever it might be. And so it becomes easier for us to work with the teachers within the guardrails of the districts. And when that happens, it becomes really easy for the teachers to try new things, to feel empowered, and to actually have the support they need from the building and from the district.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I love the like it takes a village. And I think that's a thing that people like, the whole idea of like AI's cheating, like it kind of became a bad word, right? Like you didn't want to talk about it. And I think what you're saying is we need to talk about it and we all need it, right?
Absolutely. So there is this idea of using AI, as you said, to cheat with, to plagiarize, but there is also this idea of using AI to think with. I think all teachers and educators are familiar with the digital divide, where we talked about access to technology or no access to technology. More recently, what we are seeing is a digital use divide. So there's students who are mindlessly sitting on their systems and just doing homework and not thinking critically, not being creative. And there are other students who are using tools, these digital tools, in very creative ways. They're using it to code and create environments. They're using it to connect with experts. They're using it to design. They're using it to play with simulations. And they are doing much more critical thinking and learning in the process. What we're going to see is if teachers in the education system don't take this idea of working with AI and teaching about AI seriously, there's going to be an AI use divide. There's going to be the people who are going to continue using AI to cheat with and get that paper done. And there's going to be this other set of students who are going to use AI in much more powerful ways to empower themselves, to amplify their abilities, not to disadvantage themselves. And it's also going to fall along these lines where, students, if a school system of the teachers are not doing anything about it, then students with access to parents at home, the social capital, it's not even about money. It's about having parents, two parents at home, maybe college educated parents, maybe parents who are deeply thinking about these issues, who support their students to think differently and use AI differently, while another group of students who don't have access to the same social capital may continue to use AI to cheat with, right?
Yes.
And so, how do we support teachers and how do we support school systems to avoid this digital use divide or AI use divide? And how do we get these students to think about the way you use AI matters, right? You can be hurting yourself or you could be empowering yourself. And this gets back to the need for developing that metacognitive skills in young people and high schoolers and young college students to think about what is my learning? What do I know? How do I get myself to be better rather than how do I get this paper done?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah.
that's great. I mean, we're coming up on time. I could talk all day. This is super, super, super interesting stuff. But last two questions I ask everybody. First one, if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about education, what would be changed after you snapped your fingers?
Oh, I think that one's easy. I would just be
Okay.
done with this standardized testing. I
Right.
think it causes a lot of stress and anxiety for students. The best way to do well on a test is to teach to the test. Unfortunately, that's true. If you want students to do well on the test, you teach to the test. But when you teach to the test, you're not focusing on creativity or critical thinking or collaboration or many of these other skills that are essential for students to survive and do well in real life. So if I could make one thing disappear, it would be standardized tests, especially in lower grades. Can we focus on bringing the joy back to learning? Can we get students to explore and think and build and do and learn with energy and fun? So if I could snap my fingers and make testing disappear, especially from, in elementary schools, that would be the first thing I'd do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So last one is what's your favorite way to use AI outside of like education or work? Like mine's cooking is what I like to say.
Oh, recently, I had to plan a barbecue and I had no time to think about it. And I didn't, so I asked ChatGPT. I told ChatGPT that I cannot think about this right now, but I have to plan a barbecue. It's going to happen over the weekend. So give me a shopping list, give me everything I need to do from Friday morning right up to Saturday evening. And I gave a very good prompt. And what it gave me was a game plan. Right, I had every list that I needed. I had a checklist. I had a shopping list. I had Friday night what I need to be doing, Saturday morning what I need to be doing, when I need to be setting up the chairs, and I just followed it to the T and did have a great barbecue that day.
That is amazing. I love that. So thank you so much for being here today. We're wrapping up. Any last thoughts for people listening?
No, thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for listening.
Okay, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.